Hi, if you want to watch exclusive content with hot girls that you won't watch on YouTube, namely where Naruto roasts Kushina and Mikoto and many other hot girls without restrictions, then visit my Boosty channel at the link in the description. The day was sunny and simple. It was the morning of the distribution of graduates of the Shinobi Academy into teams. Everyone was already in the classroom. Teacher Iruka began the roll call, when suddenly, with a roar, sweeping away everything in his path, including the classroom door, a young guy burst into the classroom, about 12 years old with black eyes and expressive face. The genius of the Uchiha clan and the love of many girls in this class, Sasuke. He looked very attractive. He had medium-length hair under a bob with slightly sloppy strands of hair sticking out from all sides. He was dressed in a standard t-shirt with a long collar and shorts with sandals, and the village protector was attached to his left shoulder. Initially, Sasuke wanted to attach it to his forehead, but his mentor was against it. Sasuke himself was not only a genius, but also talented, so much so that at the age of 5 he mastered the fireball technique and could have graduated from the ninja academy at the age of 9. But his only guardian insisted on finishing school properly, since he himself was thrown out of his school for hooliganism and did not want his adopted child to face the same fate. "I knew I'd be late. You couldn't wake me up earlier." Sasuke mentally resented his guardian, to which the voice in his head, belonging to his mentor, said, "Oh well, we still made it in time for Sasuke." And there was enthusiasm and determination in his voice. Immediately upon seeing the young Uchiha, his best friend and fellow prankster, the blonde with blue eyes, Naruto Uzumaki, called out to him. "Hey Sasuke, sit here," the cheerfully restless ninja suggested, to which the girl with pink hair, hitting him on the head, said, "Well then I'm leaving." "So Haruno, no one is going anywhere. Uzumaki, one more such prank and you will go report to the Hokage." Sasuke sat down as expected next to his comrade, to which Miss Haruno only eloquently turned away. "What a smug bitch. I hear everything," was all Sasuke mentally snapped at his guardian's comment. "I'm sorry," he sighed, involuntarily remembering his sister's husband in his youth. "And now it's our Uchiha's turn to be distributed. Team number 7, Naruto Uzumaki. Hooray, they named me," he thought to himself, but in reality he just smiled. "Sasuke Uchiha?" And then the bosom friends exclaimed in unison, "Yes." And they gave each other 5 as a sign of good luck. "And Sakura Haruno?" To which the pink-haired girl only slammed the table and screamed, "Iruka-sensei, it's so unfair. Why should I be on the same team as these two talentless people?" To which her friend sitting at the back of the room said, "Are you still unhappy? What a moron. Every girl dreams of being on the same team as Sasuke. And you?" To which teacher Iruka only made comments, raising his voice and banging on the table. "Sakura. Ino. Stop it or I'll ask your mentors to punish you. Sasuke has the highest results on the exam. Uzumaki has the lowest. And you Haruno are good in theory, but weak in practice. It would have been better if they had put me on the same team with Ino," Sakura said furiously and flew out of the classroom like a bullet. To which Naruto and Sasuke simultaneously stood up from their desks and Sasuke said, "Teacher, let us calm Sakura down." To which Sensei Iruka was not against, however Sasuke knew for sure that at home he would have a stern talk with his, as he called this person, adopted mother, through the reflection in the mirror. Haruno herself was sitting on a bench in the courtyard near the academy when her teammates approached her. "Hey Sakura, date bail." To which she only turned away from them when Sasuke grabbed her by the shoulder, which put Sakura into a slight stupor. "Forgive us, Haruno, if we offended you." To which she only cried and said, "No, it's not your fault." "So what's the matter, Sakura? Why do you always despise us?" Naruto, unable to contain his indignation, shouted at the girl, but she only fell into a slight shock and went into hysterics, to which Sasuke only began to stroke her. "Naruto, stop it!" was all the Uchiha barked at his friend. "I envy you." Sakura's words surprised virtually everyone, even the young Uchiha's mentor. "You are free from control from your parents, no one fences you off from your interests and forces you to study hard, no one tries to make you a child prodigy, and does not prevent you from living independently." To which Sasuke stopped petting her, and only walked away from her, as if from a demon. And Naruto, on the contrary, ran up to Sakura, grabbed her by the shoulders and yelled at Sasuke, Sasuke, what's wrong with you? You were the one who reproached me. You were the one who offered to comfort her. And then the most unpleasant detail of Uchiha's character appeared. He became cold as ice and with a cold and detached tone full of hatred and hostility said, "Let her not talk nonsense. Is she jealous of us? If only you knew me." "What are you talking about?" Naruto and Sakura said in unison. "I know you very well, Sasuke." Naruto decided to settle the conflict and wanted to calm Sasuke down, to which the latter only hit his friend on the hand, saying, "I'm going back to class to find out what time I need to come to school tomorrow, and I advise you to do the same." And then his voice became softer, but did not lose its detachment. "After all, you and I are on the same team." Sasuke really didn't want to go home from school, because he knew his guardian's character very well and didn't want to fall under his burning gaze. But he had no choice. Either he would return to his destroyed house after the massacre of his clan, or the mentor would bring him home by force and start scolding him, although Sasuke himself knew very well that foster mother didn't like to lecture, but on the contrary, he tried to abstract himself from this kind of imposition of morality. But today was a special case. Returning home in the evening, having spent virtually the entire day without speaking to either Naruto or his guardian, Sasuke wanted to avoid a moment of confrontation. "Come to the mirror," his guardian said in a slightly cold tone, which Sasuke decided to do, because he knew perfectly well that arguing with the mentor, when he spoke in such a tone, was more expensive for himself, at least because if you had one mind with him, he would drag you to the mirror by force, which was rare, but still, and secondly, Sasuke knew the guardian's memories perfectly well and knew how everything ended when he was angry. So in such a situation he always decided not to anger him unnecessarily. And in the reflection of his mirror, he saw a young man of a little over 20 years old with long, beautiful, half-loose hair, clothes as if from another century, and a very refined face, which was also very beautiful and had both male contours and a little female, who was now looking at Sasuke with a red gaze, which meant to Sasuke that the conversation would be very serious. "I know I'm guilty." "So what?" said the young Uchiha, now in his guardian's native language, now in the language of 5 countries. "I heard what she said. Yes, I know perfectly well that we are on the same team." "So what?" "Scold me, Wei-sama," and here he was unable to contain his anger and punched the wall. And he began to cry, realizing that people value the situation only by how it looks from the outside, without looking into the essence. "I know," said only Wei. But then he cut him off. "But you can't splash out your emotions whenever you want, Sasuke." And then, taking Sasuke's hand by the shoulder, he added, "This once destroyed not only me, but also all those who were not guilty of this, and all the rest." And then memories of the past flashed in his head, when his sister and her husband died, many innocent people in the clan he once cared for. To which Sasuke took hold of the hand that was holding his with the phrase, "Thank you, Inma-sama." The next day came. The sun was shining brightly and there was not a cloud or a cold breeze outside that could spoil this clear spring day. This time Sasuke showed up to school even a little earlier than usual, because he was so tormented by his conscience from what happened yesterday that he couldn't sleep. And showed up to school before everyone else. And when Naruto and Sakura approached the audience synchronously, he immediately addressed them. Guys. Forgive me about yesterday," and immediately looked away from them. To which Naruto only approached Sasuke with understanding and asked, "Did you get hit hard?" To which Haruno only asked in bewilderment, "What do you mean got it? Isn't Sasuke the only survivor of the Uchiha clan?" And then Naruto and Sasuke quickly realized that Sakura had never had a heart-to-heart talk with them until yesterday, and so Naruto decided to tell Sakura what he knew about Sasuke, and he knew very little, despite their friendship. "You see, Sakura," and here he scratched his pumpkin and continued, "after Sasuke's clan was killed, he was taken in by one man. I don't know his name, and I've never seen him, but I know one thing for sure, Sasuke cherishes him like a real father." To which Sasuke only looked up at his teammates with embarrassment, and from under his brows, and seeing Sakura's astonished face, he replied, "This is true." And then Sakura, realizing yesterday's mistake, stood up embarrassedly, swinging her leg, with a downcast gaze hiding her hands behind her, and said, "Forgive me, Sasuke." To which he merely nodded. "It's okay, Few people know about it. And then Naruto, tapping Sasuke on the shoulder, repeated the question. Hey Suna! I'm asking, did you get hit hard? No. Sasuke waved off the answer and ironically made fun of the situation with a grin. I was more afraid. Well, that's great, Naruto replied and handed Sasuke and Sakura mint candy. As you said, we are one team. So what are we going to do? Sakura immediately remembered. Well, first we'll enter the classroom, wait for the Jonin, and then we'll decide. Uchiha answered with a smile on his lips, and all three of them entered the classroom. And when all the former students had already met their mentors, their teacher still did not appear, and then Naruto and Sasuke began to actively whisper, to which Wei only made a remark. Sasuke, are you forgetting anyone? To which Sasuke only mentally groaned, because he remembered very well that Sakura in childhood very often gave both him and Naruto away in their pranks. Therefore he did not want to discuss the plan with her. But he understood perfectly well that not telling her about their prank in front of the Jonin meant losing trust, which was already shaky. Hey, Sakura, Sasuke called to the pink-haired girl, don't you want to know our plan? To which she only looked indignantly at the couple of friends, as if they had gone crazy, but with a sigh she asked, Are we sure we won't get into trouble? Well, even if I get into trouble, what difference does it make, Datebail? Naruto tried to cheer Sakura up, to which she first became embarrassed, and then laughed, and nodded. What should I do? And then Sasuke briefly explained to the guys the details of their plan. To be brief, the Jonin who was coming to them did not yet realize that he would be dealing with very problematic students, and as soon as he entered the classroom, his future students immediately pounced on him with hugs, trying to rip off his bandage with the leaf logo, thereby discouraging him. But the Jonin was no slouch. Which is why Sasuke initially made Naruto understand what needed to be done so that Sakura could remove the bandage from him and throw it out the window onto a tree. And as soon as the teacher began to resist, Naruto and Sasuke turned into very pretty naked girls, which made the sensei feel so embarrassed and not notice how his headband was missing. But immediately taking his hands in his hands, the 27-year-old Jonin with gray hair quickly rushed to the window, thereby stopping the petty prank of our guys. Well, what can I say? He said through his mask with a sigh. It's stupid, but I see you've already become friends. The boys only looked downcast because they hadn't managed to fool the teacher. Sasuke, if you had come up with a plan earlier, maybe I would have come up with something more original. Wei Ying stated the failure with a little mockery. Shut up, was all he mentally barked at his guardian, who never woke up until 9. To which the former elder only tried to encourage Sasuke. Well, don't be angry, Sasuke, everyone makes mistakes. To which Sasuke only smiled, remembering all the memories of his mentor about his pranks. I also did not immediately come up with this prank with the book. It took me a day to come up with how to evoke emotions in someone who rarely shows them. To which Sasuke quietly laughed. Hey Sasuke, what's wrong? The young Uchiha's friend asked him, not knowing all the intricacies of his telepathic communications with Wei Ying. Nothing, I just thought to myself how stupid it was for us to commit such a prank. To which their new teacher merely waved his hand. Don't pay any attention. Let's go outside and meet each other. And as soon as they went outside, the Jonin asked them to tell them their names, what they like, what they don't like, and what their dream is. And you yourself, teacher? Sakura asked the Jonin the same question with curiosity. My name is Kakashi Hatake. What I like and don't like is none of your concern. And I don't really have any dreams. And this answer greatly discouraged everyone present, except Wei Ying. Well, whatever. It's much better than listening to a 3-hour lecture on behavior. To which Uchiha only eloquently rolled his eyes. The first one to talk about his dreams was Naruto. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I really love ramen, especially the one they make in Ichiraku. There is probably no thing I don't like. My dream is to become an outstanding Hokage in the village. Okay, who's next? I'm Sakura Haruno. I like to walk with my friend in the flower shop. I dream of freedom. Wow, that's pretty unusual, thought Kakashi. But out loud he only asked, I see, and who annoys you? These two, Sakura answered, pointing at Sasuke and Naruto. My name is Sasuke. I am from the Uchiha clan. I have no nickname. Sasuke introduced himself briefly and with a sparkle in his eyes, having figured out how to brush off Kakashi. What is dear to me, What is not your concern. I will live as I live and fulfill the promise that my brother took from me," he said, folding his hands in front of him and bowing. "Okay, tomorrow I'll give you your first task," Kakashi told the guys. "What kind? If it's not a secret?" the restless Uzumaki asked across from his father. "You must complete this task together." Well, Naruto was amazed. "Calm down, Naruto, let the man finish speaking." Sasuke tried to reason with his friend. "This will be a survival exercise," the hidden leaf Jonin replied distantly. To which Sakura suddenly jumped up from her seat with a scream. "What the hell? We've already learned all the basics of survival." To which Kakashi only replied ingratiatingly, like a cat. "That was just a theory, young lady, but this will be practice." To which Haruno, realizing her helplessness, quickly subsided. Out of 27 students, only 9 can become full-fledged genin, so tomorrow we will check what you have managed to learn during your years at the school. You see, Sasuke, and you are still wondering, why do you need to stay when you can finish as an external student? You're right about that, Inma-sama. The boy mentally stated the situation with his head down. And after listening to all the teacher's conditions, the boys did not immediately disperse, but went together to discuss the plan of action at Naruto's favorite place, where Naruto ordered ramen for himself, ice cream for Sasuke, to which Sakura asked, "Sasuke, aren't you afraid that your throat will hurt?" "Not at all, Cherry," Shun Sasuke answered mockingly. And when the guys received their order, they began to discuss their plan for passing the exam. "So if these are tests of the application of our knowledge, then we need to show ourselves as a coordinated unit," Sasuke suggested, and with this our friendly team number 7 began to plan their actions. And this is what they came up with. Even though the teacher was a few hours late, the boys were still ready for any tasks that Mr. Hatake would give them, and when Kakashi discussed the main task for the students, the boys quickly first went in different directions, and then united in one place to discuss the details of their plan, and the first one who began to be indignant was Naruto. "Why do we have to sit in the bushes like rats, Sasuke?" Uzumaki was clearly outraged and wanted to ram, to which Sakura tactfully gave him a slap in the face. "Understand, Naruto, our opponent is a Jonin, you can't take him that easily." Uchiha tried to briefly explain the situation to his stupid friend. "So here's my plan, we do everything as we originally planned, Sakura, you distract, and Naruto and I will try to get the bells. Naruto, remember the clones are also a distraction until I get into the game." "Sasuke, are you sure our plan will work?" Haruno asked him uncertainly. "Well, at least we'll try," the blondie answered instead of his friend. Sakura instantly ran out of the bushes with a kunai in her hand trying to distract the Jonin. "Oh, how brave!" Mr. Hatake thought when he fought with her, not having time to notice how he was already grabbed by one of Naruto's clones, and then Kakashi used the substitution technique in order to avoid the attack, but he was unable to run far from the genin, because Uchiha was not far from him, shining with his unusual eyes with 3 tomo called Sharingan, which he awakened for the first time during the clan massacre. And managed to develop, thanks to the memories of his mother, but he managed to find the Jonin so quickly and run to his hiding place, thanks to the hermit mode, and he fought with the Jonin for a short time until Sasuke gave a signal to Naruto and Sakura. Naruto, with the help of clones, attacked Kakashi from behind, and Sakura threw Sasuke his universal weapon, and before Kakashi had time to figure out what it was, he immediately fell into a powerful genjutsu. Kakashi Hatake woke up sitting on the ground leaning on a pillar near a gravestone. And in front of him were the genin who had managed to fool him so easily. And they were holding bells in front of the teacher, and one bell was held by Sasuke and Naruto together, and the second was held by Sakura. "Have you ever thought about defeating me separately?" Kakashi playfully asked the young students. "No way," Naruto firmly stated, clapping Sakura on the shoulder. "We don't abandon our own." Especially the teacher. Sasuke began to speak in a playful tone. "Like a girl, why did they assign us to a team if we could defeat you individually?" To which Kakashi only laughed at the guy's resourcefulness, and said with a smile in his eyes, "Well, you passed the exam. After all, people who complete tasks at any cost are important, but those who value their team are irreplaceable." To which the boys only agreed with laughter and offered their new teacher to share with them the lunch he had brought with him as a reward for the boys. To which he was very surprised, but did not refuse, sharing with the boys his personal experience regarding his worldview and studying his new students better. Almost a few days after completing the 4th rank missions, in the 3rd Hokage's office, Naruto Uzumaki was outraged that they were given such low-ranking missions, to which Kakashi reprimanded Naruto by hitting him. Seeing this, Sasuke approached the table where the 3rd Lord and their former teacher Iruka were sitting and bowed. Folding his hands in front of him, he addressed them. "I apologize, Hokage-shun, Iruka-shun, but allow us to complete a task, at least a 3rd rank one, to understand what exactly we are capable of for now." Hiruzen and Iruka were extremely discouraged by this request from the young Uchiha. And to be honest, they were not the only ones. "Sasuke, what's wrong?" asked young Haruno. And their teacher chose to remain silent. Sasuke's mentor was very concerned about this idea, and so he asked very tactfully, "Are you sure about this, Sasuke?" "Absolutely, after all, you Wei-sama yourself in your youth completed rank 2 tasks." "That's true, but I was about 16 then, so already." To which Sasuke mentally interrupted his guardian. "Let me show you what you taught me, in Masama." To which the sorcerer only mentally spread his hands. "Okay." And Sasuke didn't even have time to notice right away that while he was talking to his mentor, an old man of about 50 had already entered the office, wearing a ridiculous hat and in a state of moderate intoxication, who, by the way, had already managed to insult Naruto, and he only miraculously, thanks to the efforts of Sakura and Kakashi, did not scratch the face of their customer. To which Sasuke decided to follow the example of the man from the memories of the mentor, and with a bow and a cold face said, "Please forgive our comrade." To which the old man, having drunk a little, introduced himself. "I am a bridge builder, Tazuna. Your task is to escort me to the land of waves safe and sound and guard me until I finish building the bridge." And with these words he hurried out of the office, while Naruto indignantly continued to rant about why the hell they would have to accompany a drunken old man, God knows where, but on the other hand the guys had nowhere to go, so either that or carry out low-ranking missions again. "Don't get so worked up," Naruto Sasuke said with a smile, hitting the blonde on the shoulder. "So what if we're seeing an old man off? It's just a couple of days." To which Naruto smiled and, having cheered up, agreed to carry out this mission. But before our brave team had time to leave the village, listening to the bickering of Tazuna and Naruto, strange things began to happen on their way. And as soon as the guys began to approach the strange puddle, Sasuke immediately, on Wei Ying's initiative, used the hermit's solution, and was able to sense the stranger's chakra. Immediately realizing where it was coming from, he charged his kunai with natural energy, which he borrowed from the area where people once died in the war, and threw it into a suspicious puddle, from which 2 hired ninja immediately flew out, trying to catch the guys by surprise. But thanks to the speed and resourcefulness of Kakashi Hatake, they were quickly neutralized. The guys themselves, in particular Sakura and Naruto, were in slight shock from what was happening and did not immediately understand what to do. Sasuke also fell into a slight stupor, but he knew that the wounds that he inflicted on the mercenaries with his kunai definitely weakened them, and therefore the danger of dying was reduced. And while his comrades stood in a daze, Sasuke quickly climbed a tree with the help of chakra and, having suppressed it completely, threw 2 more kunai charged with the natural energy of the dead, thereby helping the Jonin to defeat the enemy mercenaries. And as soon as Sasuke went down to his friends and turned off the hermit's resolve, he immediately fell to the ground, which made Naruto come to his senses and run up to Sasuke. "Sasuke, are you okay?" To which Uchiha only responded sarcastically to his friend, clearly not being in a state to have fun right now. "What do you think? Idiot!" To which Naruto only fell into confusion, blaming himself for not being able to help either his teacher or his friend and unable to understand why Sasuke suddenly felt so ill. Meanwhile, Kakashi, holding 2 captured Chunin in his hands, turned to Tazuna with a demand to talk. When they tied up the mercenaries, Kakashi wanted to get kunai from their bodies to make it easier to tie them up, but he was immediately stopped by Sasuke, and Kakashi was surprised by his hermit mode. While in this mode, Sasuke instantly took out 2 of his kunai sprinkled with the energy of hatred and threw them away before the Jonin was hurt, to which Sakura only yelled at Sasuke, "What are you doing, Sasuke?" To which Uchiha, once again switching to his normal form, replied, "These kunai are dangerous for chakra. Whoever takes them can die or turn into an evil spirit. And the Jonin was very surprised by this fact, but he was more alarmed by where the young Uchiha could have learned such a dangerous technique, which he had never heard of in their area. Sasuke, the sorcerer, called his adopted son. "What else?" he asked, clearly not in the mood to listen to his worries and advice. To which Wei, remembering himself, decided to remain silent, simultaneously making fun of the situation, because he, too, once did not listen to the person who was worried about him, but he himself was unable to understand why. "Don't worry about me. I can handle it," Sasuke replied, taking his shoulder and passing. "After all, who am I if I can't handle this task?" Having learned from the prisoners the information that confirmed the level of Tazuna's mission, it could have been interrupted if not for the compassion of his friends Naruto and Sasuke. As soon as they heard from Kakashi and Sakura that they should retreat, Sasuke immediately jumped up in front of the guys with his friend and said, "No way, since we've taken on the mission, we'll go to the end." "Sasuke, are you sure you can handle it?" asked Kakashi. "And Naruto and Sakura aren't very experienced yet." "Don't worry about us," the friends cried out in unison, which surprised everyone present. And Sasuke even felt the pride of his mother, which meant to him that he couldn't retreat for a minute now. And as soon as our team and the bridge builder were in the boat, and they set off for the land of waves, Tazuna told the guys what the matter was, and why he had to deceive their superiors about the rank of their mission, simultaneously pressing on their pity, saying that if he died, then the family would definitely not forgive them. However, Naruto and Sasuke were no longer going to abandon the old man in trouble, and this initiative was supported by Wei. Kakashi and Sakura decided a little later that since there was nowhere else to go, then they should help the old man Tazuna. Naruto and Sasuke couldn't wait for a new adventure, but they both knew that they would have to be on guard and watch both ways. That's why, when the guys were already on the shore of the land of waves, Naruto, hearing a rustling sound, immediately threw a kunai in the direction of the sound, thereby catching an unusual white rabbit, and as soon as Sasuke and Kakashi noticed its color, they immediately began to wait for the attack of the enemy shinobi, which did not take long to come. Because the guys were immediately attacked by a fugitive ninja of the hidden mists of Mochi. And dodging the unexpected attack in time, Kakashi told the boys to wait aside, to which Naruto was outraged, but Sasuke understood the level of their opponent's strength and therefore remained silent. However, their teacher's nickname made him wary. Sharingan Kakashi, Copy Ninja. However, when Naruto heard about the Sharingan for the third time, he asked with annoyance, "What is he talking about?" "Sharingan, yes Sharingan, what is that anyway?" To which Sasuke, lowering his face, said, "Special eyes that can see and copy other people's techniques. But where did Kakashi get it from?" "I'll tell you everything later, Sasuke." Mr. Hotake waved off the Uchiha, and as soon as he began to fight Zabuza, Sasuke immediately called Naruto and Sakura to the old man, simultaneously creating a field of chakra near them. "The field won't last long, our opponent is very strong, I think genjutsu like on our teacher won't work on him." "What about your energy, Sasuke?" his best friend asked in confusion. "I can't sense it in this area, so we'll have to use a different strategy. Sakura, I'll show you how to hold this field. Don't let go of it under any circumstances." Sakura was a little surprised, but at the same time decided to agree, realizing that she was of no use in the battle, but at the same time thinking about the fact that she judged Sasuke very superficially. However, as soon as Sasuke was distracted to hand over control of the energy field to Sakura, his friend Naruto had already tried to attack Zabuza, which caused the Uchiha to become angry and worried, and seeing how strong Zabuza was, Sasuke fell into a stupor for a while until Kakashi intervened in the battle and saved Naruto. However, the battle between the two Jonins came to an end rather quickly when Kakashi fell into Zabuza's trap, and then Naruto and Sasuke exchanged glances with each other. And Uzumaki cast his clones, distracting Zabuza while Naruto turned into a shadow shuriken and the clone threw it to Sasuke so that he could pull off the adventure that Naruto had come up with and told his friend about. Sasuke first threw his shuriken, and then Naruto's at Zabuza so that he would lower Kakashi, and when Zabuza tried to make an attempt to kill Tazuna, he was almost scorched by his fireball. And then the Jonin entered the scene again and the battle between him and Zabuza continued, ignoring Naruto's chatter, which initially angered him, but then Sasuke pulled him out of the water, walking along it, and said, "No need. This is not our battle." Naruto was very annoyed by this, but he did not contradict his old friend. And just as Zabuza was on the verge of defeat, Sasuke immediately noticed a masked guy sitting on a tree who threw acupuncture needles at Zabuza. But while Kakashi was chatting with that boy, Wei Ying sensed some danger and therefore asked Sasuke to come closer to the body pierced by needles, and as soon as the young Uchiha approached Zabuza, the mentor's fears were confirmed and a memory immediately flashed in his head of how his adopted brother, Jiangqin, was also knocked out for a while by a healer, and Sasuke, understanding the fears, immediately shouted, "Be careful, Kakashi-sensei!" To which the masked boy immediately came to his senses and fled the scene with Zabuza. Sakura and Kakashi fainted from chakra exhaustion and Naruto and Sasuke quickly ran up to them. "Oh shit!" was all that escaped Sasuke's lips, to which Naruto looked at him in confusion. "It doesn't matter, the main thing is that we need to hide in a secluded place. Tazuna-san, can you help us?" To which the old man nodded understandingly to the guys and took the leader of Team 7 onto his already elderly shoulders, while Naruto and Sasuke took turns riding the exhausted Sakura on their backs. Quite quickly, by evening the guys reached the house of Mr. Tazuna, where his daughter and grandson, as the heroes later learned by name Inari, were waiting for him. And quickly, without preamble, Naruto, Sasuke and Tazuna dragged the wounded in and right there, after a small feast, where the guys simply reported to their daughter the whole essence and business of their task, Naruto and Sasuke went to sleep in the same room where their wounded were located after the battle with Zabuza. Sasuke waited until his friend fell fast asleep, looked out the window where a small crescent moon was shining, and stretching out his hand towards it, whispered with a smile on his lips, "This is my first time spending the night away from my home." "So how is it?" Wei Ying asked. "Not really. To be honest," the young Uchiha answered the former elder with a bit of sadness and melancholy and, realizing that the dialogue would lead nowhere, immediately changed the topic to the one that had been bothering him for a long time. "Listen, in Masama, why, when I run into the Hokage, don't you let me ask him about the day the demon fox attacked Konoha and what rituals were involved there?" He remained silent to this question, resolutely remembering the day when Sasuke lost his real family, thinking that something was wrong here and he knew perfectly well what. "Why do you think that the Hokage is to blame for the death of his relatives?" To which Masama only sighed sadly, and looking at the crescent moon, sadly replied, "Because that is the essence of politics, they don't care about the essence of others, they just want to appoint the culprit, and then figure out." Sasuke had to agree with that, because he remembered his mentor's memories very well, which, by the way, had helped him awaken the Sharingan at the time. He understood perfectly well that being angry at people for the fact that they could do anything in a fit of fear and rage was simply stupid, but he still could not believe that the village and the Hokage were at least somewhat guilty of the extermination of his clan. But at the same time he was perfectly aware that the tragedy that had occurred was clearly not the machinations of his elder brother, who was trying to convince him otherwise. He clearly understood that his brother had some kind of goal, but he did not know what it was. And then Sasuke smiled. "However, I am glad that this anomaly caused by the summoning of the nine-tailed fox and the destruction of the seal of the underworld was introduced to you by Masama." When Sasuke said, "Masama," Wei Ying remembered another boy who once called him the same as Sasuke, which made him feel hurt, sad and melancholy. And then, understanding his emotions with a sense of guilt, Sasuke lowered his eyes. "It's okay, it's not your fault. Sasuke, the only person who is to blame for the clan's extermination is me. You were just doing what you had to in Masama." To which the elder did not answer, but simply waited until Sasuke fell asleep to reflect on what had happened in the past, and what had happened during these years of the strange anomaly. But at the same time, his mind switched off exactly at 1 o'clock in the morning with only one thought. "You look a lot like him." The next morning, Kakashi and Sakura woke up and the boys began to think about what had happened. "By the way, I'm worried about this young man in a mask," Sakura, who had come to her senses, began to reason. "Masks like these are only worn by Ambu." "Ambu?" Naruto asked again, to which Sasuke immediately began to explain who they were. A special squad of ninjas whose task is to exterminate enemy shinobi and criminal shinobi without a trace, so that their bodies do not tell all the secrets of the village. But then why are you, Sasuke, so scared for Kakashi-sensei if this ninja is our ally? To which the answer came to her mind almost immediately, and she looked anxiously first at Sasuke, and then at Kakashi, to which the latter answered with regret. That's exactly right, it wasn't a real Miss Ninja. How is that? Naruto asked, unable to comprehend the whole multi-move that had happened in his head. I'll explain later. Sasuke answered his friend enthusiastically. To which Kakashi explained that these needles could both kill and put a person to sleep, to which the young Uchiha decided to put in his 2 cents, showing off his knowledge to the Jonin. Also, with these needles, if you understand it well, with the help of chakra control, you can seal a person's mind. Kakashi was clearly surprised by the last fact. How did Sasuke know this, and could he be so sure if even their village didn't know about it? To which Sasuke only smiled, because in any unclear situation you need to smile. And this gesture was very discouraging for the experienced Jonin, former ANBU. But then his thoughts switched to a more important aspect. The guys need to be prepared for the battle with Zabuza and his partner, so the 27-year-old sensei turned to the Uchiha. Sasuke, I saw that you already know how to control the chakra in your legs well. To which Sasuke responded with a bow that was both familiar and unusual for their region. Yes, that's exactly it. I learned this ability when I was 9 years old, right after mastering shadow cloning. Great, then it's time for Naruto and Sakura to learn this too, Kakashi said playfully, not paying attention to the children's discouraged faces. What do you mean, teacher? How will regular training help us? After all, our enemy is a ninja, whom even you with the Sharingan couldn't resist. Sakura said, clearly furious at this news, to which Kakashi hastened to calm her down, saying that they would grasp everything on the fly and would be able to learn this technique in a couple of days. However, not everything turned out to be so simple. No, of course the guys tried, but in the end Naruto ended up behind his comrades, who had already mastered chakra control, which Sasuke was not surprised about, and not because his friend was a talentless person, but because while still studying at the academy he noticed that Sakura controlled chakra very well. Which is why he put her to hold back the barrier in the battle with Zabuza. But despite all this, Sasuke came every day to encourage Naruto so that he would not feel lonely and could master this technique faster. However, Sasuke was not prepared for what Naruto would ask him after he finally learned how to climb trees. When Sasuke gave his friend the quiver of water, Naruto asked him directly and irrevocably, "Do you also have another essence inside you?" To which Sasuke only fell into slight shock. And Naruto continued, "You spoke that night when we came to Mr. Tazuna's house." And then Sasuke's surprise turned into anger and misunderstanding. "So you didn't sleep?" To which his friend only looked at him with a look of curiosity and interest. "I think you can tell him everything," Wei encouraged Sasuke, knowing full well his friendship with Uzumaki. "My mentor, the one I told you about," Sasuke began, stuttering a little and hesitantly, and after a second's pause, having collected his thoughts, confidently, but a little afraid, he continued his story. In fact, a ghost. And Naruto was very surprised by this phrase, and Sasuke, casting aside all doubts, continued. "His name is Wei Ying. His common name is Wishin. As he himself says, he has been with me since the nine-tailed beast attacked Konoha." At which Naruto's gaze changed from surprise to guilt and sympathy. And he thought, if they hadn't sealed this demon inside me, and then a tear rolled down Naruto's face, it's all because of me. To which Sasuke merely touched Naruto's shoulder and said, "No need to feel sorry for me," and he smiled at his friend. "At first I sometimes dreamed of strange fragments from his memories. But then I began to hear him. But I knew that like my brother and parents he was with me almost always, and it was thanks to him that he replaced my dead relatives for me, as they were gone. I'm so sorry, Sasuke." "It's okay, you didn't know." To which Uzumaki merely shook his hand off his shoulder with the phrase, "It was sealed in me, that demon that caused this phenomenon." The young shinobi stated the fact, to which Sasuke, looking at the sky, said, "In Masama, and I don't think that it's because of the attack of the demon fox. On that day, he destroyed a very powerful seal, so most likely the fox itself has nothing to do with it, What exactly is the ritual with which he was sealed? The young Uchiha shared his assumptions. To which, with tears in his eyes, his best friend replied, "If I could remember, I would definitely help you, but the only one who knew the ritual was the fourth master, and he died." And with these words, Naruto stood up and began to beat the tree with his fists, screaming, "Why? Why me? Don't dwell on the past, friend," Sasuke said, thereby drawing the blonde's attention to himself. "All of us, even my mentor, had a difficult past, but it is thanks to this past that we are here." And these words of Sasuke surprised even Kushina, who for many years tried to hide his guilt for the death of his sister and clan, for this anomaly, for not listening to the advice of people who valued him and wanted to help him. But he always tried to remain himself, so that the pain would finally go away. Despite all the sorrows, the boys returned in good spirits and with a smile on their faces, stating the fact that Naruto had finally learned to climb trees with the help of chakra. And when Kakashi finally recovered from his injuries, the guys continued their mission to protect the bridge builder together, despite the danger threatening them, except for Naruto, who slept soundly after yesterday's training in tears. And in order to be prepared for any situation, Sasuke, already leaving the house of Old Man Tazuna, activated the hermit mode. And he was right, because already approaching the bridge he felt the presence of their old acquaintances, Zabuza and his friend partner, who disappeared from the scene. But at the same time Sasuke felt something else. But unable to believe what was happening, he mentally asked Kushina about it. "Is it just me or do I feel dark energy?" To which his mentor responded with annoyance, "Unfortunately, no, this is the same energy." And Sasuke immediately took out, just in case, a flute, which initially allowed him to put people into genjutsu. But today, he wanted to use it to summon dark energy, because he felt that people died on the bridge, which meant their energy could be used against their killer. "It's not worth it, Sasuke. I don't have to worry about myself, because I don't have chakra, which means dark energy isn't scary to me, but as for you." To which Sasuke replied mentally with a grin, "I can handle it, after all, it's not for nothing that I learned to suppress chakra before I learned to use it in battle." And taking the flute in his hands and suppressing his chakra, Sasuke first managed to declassify the mist renegades with its help, and then fight the guy in the mask on equal terms, without using weapons. However, when the young ninja cast his trump card Ice Mirrors, Sasuke momentarily lost control over the suppression of chakra, which is why dark energy began to tear and torment Sasuke from the inside. As soon as Naruto came to Sasuke's aid, he was already almost completely out of strength, noticed his friend's stunned face and said, "What, with your face?" To which he, with an equally stunned face, said, Sasuke, you are." And then Sasuke, with a smile on his face, remembering their pranks from childhood, fell down, but his friend did not allow him to hit the concrete structure of the bridge, taking him in his arms. "Sasuke!" Naruto shouted, afraid for his friend. But he looked at him and said only one phrase. "I myself. It's my fault." And before he could touch his friend to calm him down, he lost consciousness. While unconscious, Sasuke seemed to be near the lake where he once learned the fireball technique. He sat on the edge of the lake, thinking how stupid it was for him to be so naive to assume that he could maintain control in suppressing his chakra so as not to get hurt, and how ashamed he was for not being able to do so, thereby failing his hopes and letting down his guardian. He was distracted from his thoughts by Wei-sama, who came to support his adopted son, but suddenly Sasuke turned around and fell to his knees in front of him in tears. Forgive me, Ima-sama, I didn't listen to you." To which the elder merely stroked the head of the foolish child and said with a reassuring smile, "Everything is fine. You're doing great." These words greatly surprised the young Uchiha, and he looked at his mentor with obvious surprise. To which the elder Island, sitting on the edge of the step next to Sasuke, answered him. Not everyone would have decided on such a rash and reckless act. If he had a choice. I warned you about the consequences, but you were not afraid of them and stepped forward. To which Sasuke, looking down, merely stated, "But I couldn't handle it." And Sasuke himself felt sick, as if 1,000 needles were piercing his heart. To which Wei Ying looked at Sasuke with surprise, and then smiled, looking into the distance and replied, "It doesn't matter." And then Sasuke, calming down and with a sense of humility, answered, Thank you, Inma-sama. And then, after thinking for a bit, Wuxian decided to ask Sasuke something out of curiosity. Listen, Sasuke. Why do you address me with the prefix Masama? He had a rough idea why Sasuke called him that, but it was important for him to know whether the Uchiha himself was aware of this reason. To which Sasuke responded with surprise, but at the same time with some sadness. I don't know myself. And then, after thinking for a bit, he continued, it's just that you dash. You were always there, like family, you're older than me. Especially since you and I are connected, and usually a child is most connected to his mother, so that's one of the reasons. Wu Xian, not expecting such an interesting answer, was surprised at first, but then immediately smiled ironically. Besides, Sasuke continued, clearly afraid to continue the dialogue, knowing that memories of the past could hurt the adopted mother, but having gathered his courage, he nevertheless said, brother, is what he once called you. Wei Ying immediately realized that Sasuke was not referring to his own brother Itachi, but to the boy Yuan, whom he once cared for and whose fate was supposedly sad. After this phrase, both Sasuke and Inma-sama just sat quietly by the lake. Sasuke mentally plunged into the memories of his guardian, about the moment when he, while looking for his brother Yuan, accidentally stumbled upon a person dear to him. Lan Zhan. Even though Wei Ying tried to avoid the topic of his relationship with one of the two Jades of the Gusilon clan, Sasuke still felt an inseparable connection between them, which was not similar to a friendly or brotherly one. And remembering this fragment from Wuxian's life, he found confirmation of this. And involuntarily recalling his dead relatives, Sasuke thought that this connection was much stronger, because even without blood ties they were like a real family, which in Sasuke's opinion was much more valuable. The young Uchiha woke up in the infirmary of his native village surrounded by his comrades and Kakashi-sensei, who were clearly concerned about his condition, and the first thing the failed dark mage heard was the loud, sledgehammer-like cry of his best friend Naruto. Sasuke, are you okay? These words pulsated in Sasuke's head, so much so that he couldn't figure out where he was or how he got there, and the only thing he could respond with was a quiet, but very irritated whisper. Don't shout, idiot. I can hear everything just fine. Naruto was clearly surprised, because even though he usually speaks quite loudly, this hadn't really irritated Sasuke before. How long was I unconscious? Sasuke asked, standing up with difficulty, his entire body aching as if he had been fighting 300 Jonin shinobi. Every muscle in his body was aching, and his chakra was regenerating so slowly that it felt like he had 1 foot in the grave. You were unconscious for about a week, Kakashi answered the young ninja, to which he clearly lowered his eyes. What do the doctors say? Uchiha asked immediately. Don't worry, you'll recover soon, but it will take a lot of time, Kakashi said with a sigh, but at the same time with hope in a week you'll be back on your feet. Your chakra is slowly but surely recovering. You know it yourself. Our teenager mentally snapped at these words. But then his teammate Sakura approached Sasuke hesitantly with a bouquet of blue cornflowers. These are for you. I hope you get better soon. She smiled at him and handed over the flowers, which both Naruto and Sasuke were very surprised by. Thank you, Sakura. And the pink-haired partner smiled. A whole month later, the boys were told that they were being asked to take the exam for the title of Chunin, and realizing that the boys would have to go through individual tests before that, each of them prepared for it on their own, and a day later, all 3 of us met together again and exclaimed in unison, Success! After which they headed together to the building where the exam itself was scheduled. Sasuke felt much better since he spent a week in the hospital and was ready for any tests and any dangers. The main thing was that he had those he could rely on with him, namely his best friend and fellow prankster Naruto, his mentor, Ghost Wei Ying, and teammate Sakura. It was not uncommon for Sasuke to wake up in the Konoha hospital and remember the time when his clan was killed and when, as he thought then, he was left all alone. It was a cloudy day 4 or 5 years ago for him. He woke up practically also deprived of strength and not knowing what was happening, to which he heard the voice of his then friend Elder Island, who was very worried about Sasuke. Hey Sasuke, are you okay? To which Sasuke, remembering all of yesterday's events, was horrified and said, Please tell me it was just a dream. Tell me. It was just a nightmare. He begged the voice in his head pitifully, unable to believe the situation, unable to believe that the entire clan and parents had died at the hands of his own older and beloved brother Itachi. But Wei Wuxian understood perfectly well that the boy did not need illusions of happiness. He understood that Sasuke himself must understand that this is reality, and you can't escape from reality. He himself felt very sorry for the young Uchiha, because he himself had lost too much, but this happened to him at a fairly conscious age and he knew that he could not understand all the pain that Sasuke felt. But he could try. After all, he himself was once a lonely child without a family. A child who dreamed of a home and parents, so he decided that he would not abandon Sasuke and would support him, because, oddly enough, Sasuke now needed care and support. Suddenly, Sasuke felt his hands cross and grab his shoulders and he felt warmth, the warmth of someone else's hands, which belonged to Wuxian. Sasuke was surprised, because he always thought that the elder was just an image, a non-existent person, and all the dreams from his childhood were so fragmentary that they seemed unreal to him. But feeling the regret of a person who was like a mother or brother next to him, he understood everything without words. "Thank you for not lying to me," Sasuke answered, weighing, feeling his heart breaking into pieces and his temples pounding with pain. But at the same time he understood perfectly well that his only person left with him would not allow him to go to the destroyed area of the Uchiha clan. "It's too dangerous," Wuxian said involuntarily, remembering his adopted brother, who also went on a rampage after the death of their family and eventually lost his strength. "You should first restore your strength." And Sasuke understood this perfectly well, but his own mother, father, they really did. And they died. Sasuke, although he didn't say anything, but tears started flowing from his eyes and he didn't know how to cope with his feelings. "Don't hold back your emotions," Wuxian said soothingly, continuing to hold Sasuke's shoulders with his hands, and then the young Uchiha began to cry. He cried for so long that he didn't have time to notice how it got dark and he, tired from his tears, fell asleep. But he fell asleep with a smile on his face, because next to him was a person who would never abandon him. That evening, when Sasuke was allowed to return to the Shinobi Academy, all his classmates began to whisper behind his back and avoid him. Even the girls with sadness in their eyes turned away from him, and this made Uchiha feel sick because there was no one from his classmates with whom he could talk. However, sitting on the slope by the lake looking at his reflection in the lake, he felt someone's gaze on him. It was the gaze of another orphan, whom everyone hated and despised behind his back. It was his classmate, the orphan loser Naruto Uzumaki. And as soon as he turned around to look at his classmate, he became embarrassed and turned away, and doubts tormented Sasuke's soul. He wanted to call Uzumaki, but he was afraid of refusal, and then the elder, perfectly understanding Sasuke's feelings, suddenly said with enthusiasm, "Be brave, don't be afraid." And with a sigh Sasuke shouted, "Uzumaki!" And then the fair-haired guy suddenly stopped and turned around in surprise. "Do you want to sit and talk?" Uchiha asked the blonde. To which Uzumaki just nodded, and they began to chat about different things, laughed and had fun until dark, and when night fell, Sasuke answered, "Sorry, I have to go home, Naruto." To which the 8-year-old blonde responded with displeasure, "What already? You can't stay, Dadabayo?" The boy spread his hands in an offended manner. After thinking about it, Sasuke suggested, "Listen, before we go our separate ways, let's steal something from the third old man?" To which the young Uzumaki agreed with interest, and together they went to the office of the third Hokage, and in attempts to steal at least something from him, they were first caught in their undertaking by a small boy who was 3 to 5 years younger than them. And then by the boy's uncle, and the guys had to run wherever their eyes looked, and they managed to climb a tree, and they laughed so loudly that it seemed their laughter would be heard even in the homeland of Sasuke's guardian. "That was great, Sasuke!" Naruto said with a toothy smile. "Thank you, Naruto," the Uchiha answered sheepishly, not believing his own amusement. And with that the friends loudly and cheerfully ran off to their homes. "Ha, just like old times," Sasuke answered the elder with a laugh, and they both laughed, and then Sasuke, full of determination, said, "Wuxian, please teach me how to fight." And then Wei understood Sasuke's feelings. He understood that the Uchiha did not dare to deviate from the path of revenge, and with a sigh he replied, "Okay, first you need to activate your Sharingan again." And these words stunned Sasuke. Did I wake him up?" And the elder said playfully, "Try to remember that day, Those emotions and feelings that overwhelmed you. And project your chakra. And half the night Sasuke tried to remember everything that happened to him on the night of the massacre, even though it was painful and bitter, but the result gave its results. And approaching the mirror, feeling a strong pulsation in his eyes, Sasuke saw the Sharingan in his eyes. That's what I thought, this power awakens from strong shocks, no matter whether it was real or in Tsukiyomi. Since then, Sasuke began to train hard, read books, study, not forgetting to find time for pranks with his friend Naruto. But the most interesting thing happened to him on the night when he awakened all 3 tomo of his Sharingan. His mentor showed him his memories to awaken his power and let him feel all his feelings. Pain, guilt, loss, everything. Sasuke felt it all as if he had experienced it himself. He felt the pain of losing his family, the pain burning his body when all the chakra was sucked out of his mentor, the pain tearing him apart when he was thrown on the mountain of the dead. This helped him awaken his second tomo in the Sharingan. But the memories of the death of his sister and clan were special. At that moment Sasuke felt such pain that he had never felt, even when his entire family died, even when he realized that his brother had betrayed him. And even though Sasuke knew that this was not his pain, he began to understand his mentor, and at the same time he felt something else. It was hatred. His mentor hated and despised himself. And then Itachi's words acquired a new meaning for him. Hate me, despise me, and live your whole miserable life like this. Suddenly he understood why Itachi said that. His brother hated himself for killing their parents and clan. He hated himself and wanted to die, and with these thoughts tears started flowing from his eyes and they themselves throbbed even more than before. And then, waking up and getting up, Sasuke went to the mirror to see his mentor. He woke up and looked at Sasuke with his usual gray eyes. And Sasuke, just looking at him, began to drown in tears more and more. How much it hurt you! And sniffling with tears he continued. How much it hurts to remember all this! Forgive me! Forgive me! Sasuke screamed pitifully, to which his mentor only took him by the cheek, with his own hand. Come on, enough! To which Sasuke, feeling the warmth of his mentor and his kindness, felt more and more guilty. But at the same time, Sasuke understood that he himself asked him to help develop his abilities, and for the first time he realized his mistake, to which his guardian took him by the other cheek to calm him down. And the young Uchiha for the first time in a couple of months finally understood that he was not alone in his trouble, and that Wei sincerely tried to help and guide him. And he realized that Wei was dear to him like a father or even a mother. And for the first time, having calmed down a little, he answered his guardian. Thank you, Inma-sama. The guys had not yet arrived at the ninja academy to take the exam when they noticed that a fight had started on the 2nd floor. Some unknown shinobi were actually hitting everyone who was trying to get into the waiting room, and the sign near the room had room number 301 written on it, which was strange because there were from 100 to 105 rooms on each floor. And at most on the 2nd floor there should be a numbering from room 106 to 210, from which Sakura and Sasuke immediately realized that this was another test and nodded in unison and went to sort things out. Are there any problems? Asked the man who didn't want to let the others through. To which Sasuke replied with a slight grin. Well, firstly, we are on the 2nd floor. Secondly, here at least the last numbering of the room is 200, and at most 210. And thirdly, if you suppress the chakra, you can see the real number of the room. It is 201, and not room 301. To which the 2 people who were preventing the boys from passing through the auditorium of expectations dispelled the genjutsu and disappeared from prying eyes. And when Sasuke, Naruto, and Sakura were whispering among themselves, they were called out by a guy with transparent, colorless eyes, who was clearly a year older than them. Hey you! What's your name? The young ninja asked in a cold tone, clearly unhappy with the situation. To which Sasuke responded sarcastically and even mockingly. What business is it of yours? That you want to ask me out on a date? The ninja was clearly stunned by this answer and was unable to respond, but then his partner, as it seemed to the guys at first, decided to stand up for his friend. Excuse me, but have some respect, we are older than you, said the loudest member of the team, judging by the tone, but his partner immediately called out. Don't interfere, idiot! Oh, and your ancestors aren't from the hidden depths by any chance? Sasuke asked playfully and jokingly, to which he heard an obvious comment about this joke. Not Sasuke. I think this peacock is clearly from the Lanling Jin clan. To which Sasuke clearly laughed. And immediately called out to his comrades. Went. And as soon as the guys were already in the hall with the stairs, that same partner of the transparent-eyed one called out to them. He was short, black-haired and had thick eyebrows, and this guy was dressed in a green jumpsuit. And in response to his call, Sasuke Uchiha said, "Look, if your partner doesn't understand jokes, that's his problem." To which the bushy-browed guy said, "No, it's not about him. I want to fight you right now." And then Sasuke asked the guy a very logical and reasonable question. "Why do you need to know this?" To which the boy just as pompously and energetically, without a shadow of a doubt, answered the young Uchiha. "I want to know what the descendant of the Uchiha clan is capable of. You are Sasuke, right?" To which Sasuke only smirked. "So what? Let's fight." Besides, and with these words he already turned his attention to Sakura, a little embarrassed. "I like you, Sakura-san." To which Sakura clearly reacted very negatively and said, "All clear, another idiot." And then the boy started to shower her with their kisses, which made her spit, but it seemed that this did not bother their new acquaintance. But Naruto and Sasuke were a little taken aback by such impudence, and, after whispering a little, were already preparing to hit the impudent guy in the face. But he quickly dodged their attack and in the end they got hit in the face by each other. Tanjutsu Sasuke managed to think and was about to get his flute, but he didn't have time, because the boy had already started his fight, quickly knocking out Sasuke's friend, and then Sasuke had to react as quickly as his opponent. And then the hand-to-hand battle of the two ninjas began. Thanks to his skills, Sasuke was not inferior to his opponent, but before he could figure it out, this young man had already grabbed him from behind and was trying to carry out his technique on him. But then they were stopped by a summoning turtle, and stepping aside, this boy began to communicate with her. And then suddenly a middle-aged man with the same haircut and the same habits and appearance as the boy crawled out of this turtle. And thanks to him, the guys learned that this boy's last name was Lee. And as soon as Lee and Naruto stopped arguing about the appearance of this man named Guy, he first began a conversation with his student, from which the guys clearly understood that they were dealing with strange guys and were about to leave. But then this, abnormal, in the opinion of the guys, Guy called out to them. "Hey guys, how is your teacher Kakashi doing?" This question clearly puzzled the boys even more than the habits and behavior of these two. "Okay, but what do you know about him?" the young Uchiha asked in a very sarcastic tone. "We are eternal rivals." This man answered quite pathetically. "It can't be." All members of the Team 7 exclaimed in unison. To which Lee began to rant about how great Jonin Guy was, thereby making himself look even more of a laughingstock than he had been before in the eyes of the guys. "Come on, Lee, actions speak louder than words," the Jonin answered his student, and immediately disappeared, appearing behind the guys, thereby discouraging them. Out of 50 competitions, I won about 49 victories. And I can assure you that I am in no way inferior to Kakashi. And as soon as the Jonin walked away, Lee turned to Sasuke. "Sasuke, I want to say one more thing. I came here to test my abilities. And I lied. I consider my partner to be the strongest genin in the leaf." And these words discouraged not only Sasuke, but also his mentor, who immediately became indignant. "What's wrong with this peacock? Only Nyahuai-san can be scared of it. I came here to defeat him. And you are my target too, so prepare for the trials." And then Sasuke shouted back at the departing Lee. "Be on guard yourself, my friend, and I won't give in to this eyeless peacock." And then Naruto perked up and also answered, "We won't give in." And then they both got a punch in the forehead from Sakura, who immediately began to criticize their actions. "Stop it! It's a disgrace. Don't make us look like laughingstocks in front of such idiots." "What a bore!" was all Wei Ying commented on her criticism. After which the guys quickly headed to the waiting room, where they were approved to participate in the exam, and they, along with the other participants, began to wait for the start of the first test. And before they could even enter the classroom, Ino immediately started hitting on Sasuke. "Oh, hello Sasuke-kun." To which Uchiha, in the best traditions of Lanjan, decided to ignore her with the phrase, "Goodbye," and began to chat with Naruto, and Sakura, Ino's best friend, just approached her with the phrase, "Ino, why do you need all these men?" These idiots are much more trouble than they're worth." And these words really angered her friend, and instead of discussing this situation they started arguing again. But then Sasuke took the pink-haired girl away from Ino with the phrase, "We don't have time to waste time on nonsense, Hiranome. We need to develop a strategy. Naruto and I managed to find one person who will help us." These words surprised Sakura very much. "What? When did you manage to do it?" To which Sasuke only responded sarcastically, "While you were cooing affectionately with your friend." Because of which Sasuke almost got hit in the face again by a very violent Sakura, but managed to dodge in time, and then they approached Naruto and a man with gray hair, tied in a ponytail, and wearing glasses. "Sakura, this is Kabuto Yakushi. He agreed to answer a couple of questions for us." Sasuke introduced this man, and he shook the young girl's hand with a slight smile. "Yes, you see, I've already tried to pass this exam 6 times, so this is not the first time for me," their new acquaintance said in a very pleasant tone. And then, bowing in his usual manner, Sasuke asked, "Kabuto-shun, could you tell us what the first test is so we can think of our plan of action?" And to this question and the dialect of the young Uchiha, Kabuto was very surprised, and before answering the guy's question, he asked Sasuke, "Oh, how unusual. You know the language of the country of the 5 clans of the Celestial Empire." And these words alerted not only Sasuke, but also his guardian, but Sasuke immediately answered with an imperturbable face, "Yes, but what about the answer to our question?" "Oh yeah, good," Kabuto said, and immediately began to explain to the guys the main point of this test. "The main point is to collect the necessary information for the team, so you will have to try. That's all I can say." And then, bowing to Sasuke again, Kabuto answered in the dialect of the Celestial Empire, "Thank you, Yakushi-shun. I don't like all of this." Elder Yilin described his concerns. "I know," Sasuke answered Masame mentally with annoyance, trying to hide his anxiety about this whole situation. "What does all this mean?" Naruto asked displeasedly. "We'll find out soon." Sasuke answered this question confidently and pragmatically. And before he could answer, an examiner named Ibiki Marino came into the classroom. And after giving them the task of writing a test, he outlined the conditions of work. And as soon as the clock showed exactly 11 o'clock, the exam began. Sasuke immediately put 2 by 2 together in his head and realized that the essence of the task was to copy the information without getting caught. And then, taking out a paperman along with a pen, he turned to Wushin. "Masama, can you help Naruto when I copy the Sharingan tasks?" To which Wei Ying, having weighed all the pros and cons and recalling how he once screwed up with the help of Nya Huaisang, asked the young Uchiha, "Are you sure it's worth the risk?" There's still question 10. "It doesn't matter whether he is or not. I have to help my friend." And smiling, Wei Ying replied, "Fine." And as soon as Sasuke rewrote the results, he gave a signal to his mentor, and he directed his mind into the paperman. Naruto, who was sitting in the middle row, did not expect this at all and was very surprised when a person unknown to him began to talk to him using a similar technique. "Don't be afraid, Naruto. Sasuke asked me to help you. Take this technique in your hand, and then I'll write everything down myself." And if Naruto wanted to say but kept quiet, because it was better this way than to let his team down and get his ass kicked by Sakura. And nodding to the person he didn't know, he began to carry out the task. And as soon as Naruto rewrote everything, Wei Ying cancelled the technique, telling Sasuke, "Everything went according to plan. Thank you, Masama." And smiling, Naruto and Sasuke began to wait for the end of the exam. And 5 minutes before the end, Ibiki asked, "Which of you wants to surrender?" And then some people began to slowly give up their positions, but then, when the patience of the young friend snapped, they stood up and answered in chorus, "No way, we've been through so much. And just giving up without a fight is not our style." To which Sakura only slapped herself in the face with the phrase, "What idiots!" And realizing that no one wanted to give up, Ibiki told the true essence of the exam, which caused even greater anger in Sakura than the statements of her teammates. But before Ibiki could give the guys the necessary instructions, a young lady of about 30 named Anko Mitarashi burst onto the stage and, after scolding Ibiki a little, announced the beginning of the second test, and all those who passed went to the territory of the Forest of Death. "There is a lot of dark energy and hidden malice here. our elder stated, looking at the forest. But Sasuke was deep in thought about the new mission and how he and his comrades could survive in this treacherous forest. You will soon understand why this place is called the Forest of Death. To which Naruto began to mimic the examiner, and she began to threaten him by scratching his cheek, and then an unknown creature, similar to a human, but from whose gaping mouth a cold worse than this forest wafted, gave her a kunai with its tongue. Personification, weighing thought, looking at this creature. What? A special kind of black magic, in which the sorcerer turns into a creature beyond life and death, losing his emotions and soul. Kushina explained briefly, feeling genuine horror in front of this creature. Are you sure about this? Sasuke asked his mentor, and then, feeling Wei Ying's emotions, he was horrified. Well, before the second exam begins, you will be given one of 2 scrolls. Your task is to get the missing second scroll and survive. I will also give you documents to sign which state that we do not bear any responsibility for your lives. The deadline is 5 days. The examiner explained the gist of the matter, and the guys went to the queue for the necessary items for passing, and having received their scroll with the inscription, Heaven, they entered the forest through the 12th gate at exactly 14:30. And immediately entering the forest, Sasuke entered the hermit mode to make sure that no one would attack them or pretend to be one of the team members. And immediately, noticing the suspicious chakra of 3 people, he grabbed his friends by the scruff of the neck and hid with them in the bushes, having previously taken out his kunai. Hey Sasuke, what are you doing? Was all Naruto asked, clearly unhappy with the situation. Sure. The young Uchiha answered him, showing him the appropriate gesture. We are being watched. And then the discontent and anger of the young Uzumaki reached its peak, but realizing that the situation could get worse, Uchiha covered his friend's mouth with his palm, to which his friend only bit Sasuke on the hand, but Sasuke had enough self-control to hold back the pain and throw 3 kunai charged with black power with his other hand, which hit 2 shinobi of the village, hidden in the mist, at once, namely the leader of the team and his blindfolded partner. And then their chakra began to slowly and surely be pulled out of them, causing them irreparable harm, and as soon as their uninjured partner wanted to get the kunai out of their bodies, he was immediately paralyzed by needles of dark energy, and trying to get them out with the last of his strength, all 3 heard the sounds of a flute and plunged into genjutsu. And they came to their senses only after the guys had already come out of the bushes and taken the scroll with the name, Earth, from them. But the guys had to wait a long time for Naruto because he was late on his own business. Well, there you go. Thank the will of fire, I thought I couldn't stand it, was all Naruto could say when he came out of the bushes. And the young Uchiha, having tied up the attackers together with his friend, brought them out of the genjutsu. Don't show up in our sight again, Sasuke told the captives in a very icy tone, and all the guys from Team 7 moved away from the scene of the incident, but feeling an unprecedented dark energy that could paralyze a person from a mile away, he stopped. Sasuke, what's wrong? The restless blonde asked his friend. They didn't leave us alone? But we tied them up, Sakura asked in bewilderment in a panic, to which Sasuke gestured for them to come closer. Looking at each other in surprise, Naruto and Sakura nodded in unison and approached the Uchiha, who was scratching something on the ground with a kunai. And on the ground it was written, We are being watched, possibly bugged. Naruto just looked at Sasuke in bewilderment. There you can see a tube through which wiretapping is carried out. And noticing this pipe, Naruto only grabbed his head in panic and said, What should we do now? To which Sasuke only calmly, hiding his fear and horror of his pursuer, replied, Naruto, Sakura, I will ask you one of 2 questions that only you know, and if we split up, and someone takes our form, I will ask you about it. And then Naruto even wanted to clarify whether he understood correctly that they were talking about Sasuke's mentor, but before he could say it, Sakura immediately shut him up so as not to reveal the secret to the enemy watching them. To which Sasuke replied with a smile, As I see, you have figured out what questions to ask me or Sakura and what questions I can ask you, he said, and quietly gave one of the scrolls to Naruto and hid the other one, when suddenly a wind whirlwind hit them, which blew almost all of them out of the way. But Sasuke managed to foresee this and hid under a tree bush, which Sakura did, but not Naruto. The lich-like creature said to its teammates, You go, and I'll deal with them myself. And with these words his 6s disappeared from sight. And before Sasuke could even breathe out, his teammate Sakura immediately turned to him. Sasuke, question, do you have any relatives? She asked, remembering the terms of their agreement, suspecting that it could be a spy, to which she expectedly received the following answer. Formally one, but not quite. Okay, a counter question. Do I have adoptive parents or a guardian? To which Sakura responded, just as expected. You have a guardian whom no one has seen and does not know his name, but to whom you treat the same as your own parent. And after making sure that it was them, Sasuke immediately asked, where is Naruto? But then he heard his mentor's warning in his head. Sasuke, you better run with Sakura, there's a lich nearby. To which Sasuke only snorted in displeasure. I know without you. And then a cheerful blonde man approached them and said, well, finally I've looked everywhere for you too. And then Sakura immediately stopped him. Not so fast, Naruto. Answer the questions first, Sakura demanded of him, to which the blonde smiled and said, yes, sure. And then Sasuke asked the blonde something that only he could know. What is the name of the mentor who raised me? To which he replied with the same impenetrable smile with 33 teeth. How should I know? You didn't tell me that. To which Sasuke smiled, threw a kunai at the enemy, and as soon as the enemy dodged the attack, he reactivated the hermit mode, to which Sakura only began to yell at him in bewilderment. Sasuke, what's wrong with you? He answered the question. To which I received an explanation from Sasuke. Not really, Sakura. When Naruto was training, I told him the name of my guardian. And with these words, he again threw a kunai with dark energy at the ninja, and he caught it without flinching. I thought so, was all Sasuke said, and without a shadow of a doubt he continued in a chilling tone, show your true form. Dark energy? How capable you are, said the guy's opponent with praise, taking his form. This shinobi turned out to be Lich. To which Sasuke grabbed the flute. Do you think Genjutsu will work on me? This creature, the product of black magic, said playfully to Sasuke. And swallowing his earthly scroll in front of the guys, he said, well, go ahead. The creature itself looked like a snake, which caused everyone to be a little stupefied. This is bad. Sasuke really won't miss the chance to find out where his friend is and may die. But his friend can't die anyway, because a fox is sealed inside him, but he is now driven by emotions. And mentally sighing, Wei Wuxian stated, it's very similar to me. Well, that's what I deserve. But Sasuke won't be able to cope with this opponent. He is 2 or 3 heads taller than him. Don't worry, I can handle it. Sasuke mentally responded to the worries of Mother, not knowing the reason for this panic, or simply not hearing the mental concerns of the experienced elder. And then the Lich looked at the guys and threw them into a stupor and causeless panic, from which Sasuke was only saved by his dexterity, and without wasting a second he took the immobilized Sakura and jumped onto the tree, onto its highest branches. And without waiting for a minute, Sasuke immediately suppressed his chakra, and squeezing his flute in his hands, he wanted to play. But he could not do it right away, because his hands were not under his control. What the hell in Masama? Sasuke, unable to contain his emotions, shouted out loud, thereby bringing Sakura out of a complete stupor and putting his flute in a holster with kunai. Sasuke began to fold the seals of the fireball, and as soon as the Lich was already close, he mentally shouted, Fire style, fireball technique, and he blew on the place where the snake-like creature was, when suddenly a couple more kunai flew in to help neutralize the creature. These were kunai from Naruto. Sorry I'm late, Sasuke, the real blonde shouted from a higher branch, and Sasuke turned around. And then with a mischievous smile he shouted, one of your foster guardians' names is In. But Sasuke, to put it bluntly, didn't care now. He was more worried about his friends than ever, which is why, once again, pressing his chakra and picking up the flute, he shouted, Naruto, take Sakura and run from here. And without listening to Naruto's dissatisfied cries, he quickly began playing the flute until Masama stopped him. And trying not to let the guys get close to either himself or the enemy, Sasuke began to play a melody of confusion, hoping to summon at least some dead person, but the lich-like creature was getting closer and closer to him, and then the Uchiha had to stop his game to activate his Sharingan and fight him back. As a result, the fight between him and this creature ended very quickly, because the enemy was able to quickly exhaust the boy with fire techniques and turning the dark energy that Sasuke called against him, depriving the Uchiha of consciousness, and the last thing Sasuke heard, as soon as he was devastated, was the cry of his friend. Sasuke! The current situation threw the young ninja off his stride, causing him to awaken the Nine Tails chakra again, just like when Sasuke lost consciousness last time. And he began his battle against his opponent and his newly summoned snake. But quickly grabbing the impudent fellow, he was about to block the fox's chakra, when suddenly Naruto was grabbed and carried away from the lich. Sasuke? The rescued man only said, dumbfounded. The savior landed on the branch where Sakura, frightened by the situation, was, and she, being in a slight stupor, at first thought that Sasuke, who saved Naruto from trouble, was in front of her. But looking into his silver eyes, she got scared and, grabbing her saved friend, asked with distrust, "Who are you?" To which I heard the words from the exhausted Naruto. "Thank you, Mr. Wei." "Naruto, do you know him?" Sakura asked, confused by what was happening. And he, having caught his breath, answered, "Yes, Sakura, this is Sasuke's mentor, Wei Wuxian, if I'm not mistaken." To which the elder replied with a smile, "No, that's right." And the guys immediately noticed that Wuxian had fenced himself off from the snake-like creature with a wall of black magic. "Children, run!" he shouted to the stunned boys. "I'll try to stop him." To which the young blonde began to shout discontentedly. "First of all, who are these children? And secondly, we will not abandon either you or Sasuke. And thirdly, I do not intend to lose to this snake, Databale." To which he could not hear the answer because the elder left to fight the snake, without listening to the guide to the end, leaving the children under a shield of natural energy. "I was waiting for you, Sasuke." The snake began to speak playfully. "Well then, you will have to wait forever, because a parasite living off obsession has a place in hell," the elder answered sarcastically and cold-bloodedly, taking the flute in his hands and throwing a couple of talismans from his bag at his opponent. Sasuke began to play a melody to summon evil spirits, which had its effect, and eventually his opponent stood up in front of Wuxian in his true half-snake form. The enemy actually had snake eyes, skin as pale as a corpse, and rather noticeable masculine facial features, albeit slightly distorted by snake features. Orochimaru himself had to retreat, since he himself was already in a half-dead state. "Well, that's quite curious, Sasuke-kun. I was very impressed by Orochimaru. Come if you need strength." And with these words the snake left the battlefield. And the elder removed the wall protecting his adopted son's friends. "It's okay. Sasuke will be unconscious for a couple of hours, so you guys better hide as quickly as possible out of harm's way," he said with a smile, and approaching Sasuke's friends, released his body from his control. New challenge Sasuke woke up the next day. The weather was very cloudy. The thunderstorm had obviously just ended. Sasuke himself felt rather vague. It seemed like his body was aching after the depletion of chakra, but it seemed like it was light, and as soon as he stood up, his friends Naruto and Sakura immediately ran up to him. "Sasuke, are you okay?" the young ninja's restless friend asked him, to which Sasuke replied with a smile. "Aren't you tired of asking this yourself?" To which all the guys laughed, and Sasuke, noticing that they were in a cave, tactfully asked a question. "What happened?" To which Naruto scratched his head and replied with a smile. "To be brief, if it weren't for your mentor, we would have been torn apart by this snake." After these words, Sasuke was quite surprised. It wasn't that he doubted that the mentor would help him, it was just that he couldn't even think that the mentor would be able to control the situation and fight the snake. "Thank you," Sasuke only nodded, mentally thanking his guardian. And he turned to his friends, continuing to shower them with questions. "Does Sakura know everything?" To which the pink-haired girl nodded, and Naruto, clapping his friend on the back, added, "Don't worry, I explained everything to her." To which Haruno only became embarrassed and bowed in the traditional style of the 5 countries and said, "I thank Mr. Wei for saving our lives." Wei Wuxian was very surprised by Sakura's polite behavior, to which Sasuke only smiled and said to his friend, "You didn't have to bow, Haruno." To which Sakura only became embarrassed and looked away from Sasuke. In fact, She was delighted with the skill and actions of her friend's guardian. He seemed to her a very majestic and fearless figure, from which she began to understand why Sasuke was never afraid of the consequences of his misdeeds and why he always said what he thought when the situation seemed unfair to him. "Forgive Sasuke, it's just," and then she looked away again, but sighed and answered everything as it was in her soul. "I admired the dedication and fearlessness of your foster father, even though Naruto and I did not see that battle with the snake. But defeating such a difficult enemy is most likely not an easy matter, and he was able to weaken him so easily. It's simply amazing." "Well, thank you. Of course, but there's nothing wrong with that," was all our elder said, mentally laughing at this situation, and Sasuke replied, "And there was nothing to be embarrassed about, Sakura. Everything is fine, we all understand you perfectly." And then looking at the forest area, he changed the subject. "Naruto, do you have the scrolls?" To which the blonde took out 2 scrolls obtained by the children and showed them to Uchiha, who crossed his hand into a fist and exclaimed, "Excellent! Now we can reach the fortress." And having come up with a plan of action, he immediately voiced it. "It will soon get dark, so it is better to wait out the night, and then tomorrow begin the march to the fortress." That's what the boys decided, but the next day Sasuke couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching them, and when he turned on the hermit's solution, he was finally convinced of it. And taking a kunai in his hands, he threw it in the direction from where the surveillance was coming from, and then Kabuto fell from the bushes to their feet and said with a smile, "Oh guys, it's you!" To which Team 7 was clearly surprised, and Sasuke, sensing something was wrong, pointed the kunai straight at Kabuto without throwing it. "Why were you following us?" To which the 20-year-old guy stood up and immediately began to justify himself. "Sorry Sasuke. And you guys, I didn't plan to eliminate you, it's just that my teammates had already found the scrolls and we agreed to meet them at the tower. That's why I was heading in the same direction as you." "This is all strange, Sasuke, be careful. He could be an ally of Orochimaru who attacked the team," the Uchiha said worriedly, in Masama feeling some kind of connection between these 2 cases. To which Sasuke mentally replied, "I know." And so the guys, despite their growing distrust of the bespectacled youth, reached the fortress where a gathering of those who had completed the task and passed the second test was taking place. And entering the room where the scrolls had to be opened, they first read the writing on the wall, and then followed all the instructions given there, and their former teacher appeared before them, Irika-sensei. Meanwhile, they didn't even suspect that in the next room, the very same snake they had fought the other day would start talking to Kabuto. "So how's the surveillance?" "Praise be to science, everything worked out, even much better than I expected," Orochimaru-sama, Kabuto answered, with a smile on his face to his interlocutor. "I managed to collect the data you needed." And he handed the snake a card with information about Sasuke Uchiha. "So how do you like him?" Orochimaru playfully asked his right hand, taking the card. "Why do you need this? You've encountered him yourself, haven't you?" Kabuto asked in a rather cold tone. "Your opinion as a secret agent from the Sound Village is important to me," the snake answered without taking his eyes off the card with information about Sasuke, where almost all the data that Kabuto knew was written, including information about Sasuke's proficiency in the language of the Celestial Empire. "You won't be interested in this." Kabuto answered the question put to him, and, adjusting his glasses, said, "You are one of those who decides everything for themselves." To which Orochimaru laughed and said, "I like your insight. However, I see that you are still interested in Orochimaru." Kabuto confronted the snake with the fact. To which Orochimaru replied with a creepy smile, "This guy is not simple at all, he is a master of the dark arts." This information left Kabuto in slight shock. "Good job," the snake said to his subordinate and disappeared, and Kabuto was left to ponder this fact about Sasuke, remembering all the rumors he heard in the Celestial Empire, when he was a secret spy for the Leaf, about the founder of the Dark Path who was killed. And with a grin he said, "If Sasuke wasn't from the Uchiha clan, I would think I was dealing with his son." Meanwhile, Team 7, having listened to the instructions from their former mentor, they began to wait for the decisive day in the fortress for the crime for the 3rd stage of their exam. However, when the day of the Genin gathering finally arrived, the Lord 3rd Hokage himself announced the beginning of the intermediate test. Because in the 2nd stage of the exam there were about 7 teams left, therefore 21 people who would have to show their strength not only in front of the teachers of different countries, but some of them would have to fight in front of the feudal lords and nobles. And before the midterm test began, the examiner, who introduced himself as Hate Gecko, asked those who thought they were obviously weak to leave the exam, which Kabuto did. The essence of the intermediate test, as the guys found out, was that they would have to fight with those who would be randomly selected by the table. And the first one she chose was Sasuke and a ninja from Kabuto's team named Akadi Yoroi. And when all the participants of the test left, the pain of the battle began. Sasuke began to attack the opponent with the help of the Sharingan and techniques. But he was not so simple and unexpectedly grabbed the young Uchiha, began to suck out his chakra, after which Sasuke barely managed to dodge him and he tried to throw a kunai charged with black energy. But Yoroi dodged him and fighting with Sasuke pressed him to the ground until he exhausted all his chakra, but was immediately surprised. Because when he thought he had won, he felt how energy flowed from behind him, which began to poison him, and the Uchiha's eyes first acquired a silver tint of the eyes, and then became red, but without Tomo. And before the ninja agent Orochimaru had time to come to his senses, Sasuke was already standing in front of him on his feet, and he himself was surrounded by dark energy ready to tear him to pieces. "Hit the child, up the baseness," said Yoroi's opponent and began to slowly and surely direct dark energy to the place where the opponent's golden core was located. Naruto and Sakura, realizing that the Elder of Island stood before the enemy, froze in a daze, seeing his strength and power for the first time. Sakura began to admire Sasuke's guardian more and more, and his phrase made Haruno squeal with delight and watch with delight how bloodlessly, but at the same time harshly, he defeated his opponent, and as soon as Yoroi was defeated, he freed Sasuke from his control and lost consciousness himself. Because he himself used too much of his energy, the Uchiha himself, being in a slight shock from the actions of the mentor, even thought, "It's good that I try not to anger Masama." But then the doctors came up to him to take him to the hospital and their team's mentor Kakashi, who grabbed him by the shoulder, said, "Well done!" And with these words, Sasuke himself lost consciousness from the loss of a large amount of chakra. Training with Kakashi Almost immediately after the end of the intermediate stage, Sasuke was visited by his team's captain and mentor, Kakashi. "How are you, Sasuke?" he asked with obvious concern in his eyes and voice, to which the young Uchiha replied with a smile. "It's okay, Kakashi-sensei." Sasuke himself really felt quite good, but the exhaustion after the battle with Yoroi made itself felt. But trying to distract himself from this vague state, he asked, "How are Naruto and Sakura?" And scratching his head, the Jonin replied, "Naruto did a great job beating Kiba in the competition." To which Sasuke smiled and mentally cried out, "Hooray!" As for Sakura, she dealt with Ino, but she lacked practice, so they didn't take her. Hearing these words, Sasuke immediately lowered his head and began to think how he could help his friends, because Sakura was a member of his team, who failed this exam only because of lack of practice. But then he remembered that he did not know the date. He returned to the dialogue with Kakashi. "Listen, Kakashi, when is the third stage?" "Exactly 1 month from now, in August," Kakashi answered with a smile on his lips that was hidden by the mask. And then, realizing where the dialogue was heading, Sasuke got ahead of his interlocutor. "Have you come to teach me something?" he asked boldly without preamble, which surprised and stunned Kakashi, but after collecting his thoughts he nevertheless answered, "Yes, Sasuke, as always, you know what you're talking about." But then Sasuke had another equally important question that he wanted to hear the answer to. "What about Naruto and Sakura?" "Don't worry, Naruto will train with my friend, a Jonin who has helped me out on missions more than once," Hatake answered calmly and with a hint of irony, which caused obvious displeasure in Sasuke. "What do you think about this?" Sasuke asked his mentor. Wei Ying understood Sasuke's feelings and thoughts perfectly well. He understood perfectly well that he was not happy with the fact that Kakashi wanted to teach him anything, because he could fight back pretty well anyway, and secondly, he was unhappy with the fact that his friend would not be able to practice and learn a new technique to achieve his goals. But Wei Ying understood something else. Namely that the anomaly could easily disappear someday. A force could appear that could stop all this, and Sasuke was not strong enough to resist many shinobi. He thought about this all the time when he saw Sasuke's failures, but he tried to distract himself from these thoughts so as not to upset the boy. But today Sasuke was able to catch his notes of fear and anxiety quite clearly. "Yes, you're right, Inma-sama." And with a smile on his face he answered Kakashi, "Okay, when shall we begin?" "Tomorrow, come in the morning to the rocks on the northern border of Konoha," answered Kakashi and hurried away. It was already a clear, sunny and rather hot day when Sasuke had long since been sitting in the mountains waiting for his teacher. "Even I didn't bully teachers like that when I was studying in Gusu." Wei-ing commented on this situation, clearly unhappy with Kakashi's tardiness. And when the wayward leader of Team 7 finally arrived, he heard Sasuke's displeased cries. "Well, finally, I thought that you were bitten to death by the corpses there." To which Kakashi was unable to give an adequate answer and only said, "Oh, come on, I was just reading and didn't notice the passage of time." Which made Sasuke really angry, because it's one thing when you're late for class because your mentor's mind is used to getting up at 9, and quite another when a jonin says he got carried away reading. And the first few days Kakashi taught Sasuke speed and techniques and reactions, so that the Uchiha could calmly develop the necessary endurance and stamina, which would allow Sasuke to master his chakra element, of which there were only 5 and in honor of which the 5 countries were named. In addition to the fire element innate to all of the Uchiha clan, Kakashi himself saw in him the ability to lightning element, and over the course of 2 weeks Sasuke slowly but surely developed his skills and speed, which ultimately allowed him to finally find out what technique Kakashi wants to teach the young Uchiha. And having nominally explained the entire system of elements in chakra, Kakashi began to teach Sasuke the technique that he himself invented, namely Chidori. For the first few days, Sasuke couldn't always focus on the strength and element of chakra, preferring to suppress it. But soon realizing that suppression was the only thing preventing him from mastering this technique, he stopped doing it, and eventually learned to cast this technique in a matter of minutes. And immediately after mastering it, he lay on his back, watching the sky, when he suddenly felt someone's presence and, alerted, threw a kunai charged with black energy into that place. And then one of the participants of the Sabaku no Gara tournament, whom Sasuke had already seen a couple of times among the participants, immediately appeared in front of him. "Your strength is amazing, Sasuke," he said in a cold and rather creepy tone, which made Sasuke immediately jump up from his seat and pick up his flute. "You also know what it's like to be in the darkness." "Sasuke, this is not a human," said his guardian, looking into the eyes of this frightening guy. "But he is not a lich either." "Who are you?" Sasuke asked in horror and fear. "The one who wants to kill you," the ninja of the Sand Village answered rather maniacally and seriously. "Well, here we go. At first, everyone and anyone wanted to kill me. And now, well, what kind of times have we come to?" Wei-ing was indignantly ironic, realizing that jokes would be bad with this interlocutor. And then Kakashi intervened in the dialogue between the two genin. "You will have a chance to fight together at the tournament, but for now, don't." And hearing these words, the strange man or beast went home, and Sasuke's training did not even think of stopping. And the day before the tournament began, Sasuke was able to figure out his Chidori mode. It was 3 attempts in one day, but Kakashi himself asked him to come to the training place again on the day of the tournament, which finally blew the young man's mind. "You know what? We've been training for a month now and I haven't been home even once. And there's a tournament tomorrow and we might just not make it to the start." To which Kakashi responded with a clearly indifferent look. "So what?" Which made Sasuke even more angry, and what's more, Wei-ing couldn't take it anymore and went and hit Kakashi. "Thank you," Sasuke replied with a smile and laughed. "You're welcome, my hands have been itching for a long time," Wei-ing replied, clearly laughing at the situation. Battle with Gara The long-awaited day of the third test arrived, and without waiting a second later or earlier, Sasuke ran as fast as he could to the tournament to arrive before everyone else and not be late. Of course, he understood that yesterday's incident with Kakashi would come back to haunt him. But he also understood that the habit of the Team 7 teacher could have a disastrous effect on the result, and he could simply be kicked out of the exam for being late. In fact, he arrived even earlier than his friend, who showed up for the exam at the very last second. Well, finally, Naruto, I thought you would oversleep. The young Uchiha greeted his friend sarcastically, happy to meet him and looking forward to their upcoming battle. And the young Uzumaki just patted his friend on the back, saying, I'm glad to see you too. And he smiled his usual 33-tooth smile. To which their new examiner coughed and asked the guys to behave more quietly, since a giant stadium of spectators from different countries and classes was looking at the participants, who had clearly come here to assess the strength of the future mercenaries, and not their preferences and behavior. You guys are the main stars of the fights that are about to begin, said their examiner, with a bandana on his head and a straw in his mouth named Ginma. And then, standing in the most honorable place in the stadium, the third old man addressed everyone present at the exam. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to everyone who came to the qualifying competition held in the Hidden Leaf. Now we will begin the main duels in which participate. I would rather listen to a 3-hour lecture on the rules of Gusu, by God, it's much more interesting, than listening to this dull speech. The third old man Wei Wuxian commented on the Hokage's speech in parallel with his speech. And when the third gentleman finally stopped his speech, Ginma, saying that he had to show them the new battle schedule, took out a piece of paper from his vest with a new fight schedule, where the new conditions for the fights were written. Look, Ginma said with a very stony face. And the order of battles was as follows. Naruto vs. Niji Hyuga, Sasuke vs. Gaara, Shino vs. Kankuro, Temari vs. Shikamaru. What surprised the participants very much was that 9 people made it to the finals, but the last 9th was killed for unknown reasons a few days ago. And having told the children the structure of the battles, the examiner named the participants of the first battles and asked the others to leave. Sasuke Uchiha walked up to Naruto and put his hand on his shoulder and said, Good luck. To which Naruto only nodded and Sasuke left the battlefield and went to the stadium stands, where another member of their team was already waiting for him. Hello, Sakura, was all he said to her, to which Sakura was surprised, and her friend Ino was very offended and pouted. Thanks a lot, idiot. Now Ino won't leave my side. Sakura responded to the greeting, dissatisfied with the situation. To which the young Uchiha, only lowering his head, said, It's a pity that you didn't pass the 3rd test, Uchiha said sympathetically. And then a Jonin from their team approached Team 7 with a blush on his cheek, which was visible even under his mask and reached all the way to his eye sockets. The sight of Kakashi shocked Sakura, to which Hataki said with a smile, Don't ask, Sakura. To which she only looked at Sasuke with misunderstanding and reproach, who looked away. Serves him right. But now Kakashi wears the mask for its intended purpose, not for beauty. Elder Island commented sarcastically on the situation. To which Sasuke only laughed. The battle between Naruto and Niji wasn't very meaningful in terms of combat, but it was full of discussions about fate and its inevitability. It wasn't me who was wrong, compared to Niji. Old man Hiruzen still said some sensible things. Wei Ying commented on Niji's philosophy with boredom and discontent, thinking that if everyone thought like that, then everyone would have died out long ago, resigned to their fate. And as expected for Sasuke and the elder, Naruto, with the help of his tricks with shadow clones, managed to defeat the despondent Hyuga, who went to the hospital after Naruto's victory in order to heal his wounds received as a result of this fight. And the next ones who were asked to the stadium arena were expectedly Sasuke Uchiha and Sabaka no Gaara. But when Uchiha was about to go, Naruto grabbed Uchiha by the hand with the phrase, Sasuke, please don't go there. These words struck him, because Naruto never dissuaded him from battles, but on the contrary, he always intervened in them, trying to help his friend and show that he was no worse than him. However, now, everything was a little different. And in Uzumaki's eyes, Uchiha for the first time in all these years was able to read fear and horror, and this fear was caused by Sasuke's enemy. But he just looked at Naruto calmly and coldly, and went to the arena. And in panic and shock, the best friend began to desperately call for Sasuke. To which their beaten teacher approached him and, putting his hand on his shoulder, replied, It's no use, Sasuke doesn't listen to anyone, and besides, it was all for nothing that we trained for a whole month. And as soon as Uchiha came on stage, his opponent buried his head in the sand, starting to put together some technique, to which Sasuke, having accumulated a little chakra, turned on the hermit mode. and having felt the terrifying chakra, he immediately understood what his adopted mother and best friend were worried about. But clearly not going to retreat, he first threw 2 kunai infected with dark energy at Gaara, which made the enemy's sand charged with chakra simply crumble, and then he began to accelerate for the necessary concentration of chakra in his hand. And having climbed the wall of the arena, Sasuke started to activate Chidori with a running start, and the first attempt to crush part of Gaara's sand was successful. However, it was not enough, and then Sasuke took out a flute from his holster and started to play an unknown melody for the audience, which was a collaboration between summoning the dead and genjutsu. However, realizing that Sasuke might not be able to cope, the elder stopped Sasuke from this idea, although effective, but still too risky, because Sasuke still cannot maintain a balance between suppressing his chakra and using it together with the dark technique. And so Sasuke, in fact, even against his will, began to play the melody of the summoning, and realizing that it would not work to combine techniques, he began to completely suppress the chakra in order to effectively defeat a serious opponent with the help of dark energy, and throwing 2 kunai charged with dark energy at Gaara, he continued to play the flute. Gaara himself, not having time to close the hole after the Chidori, caught one of the kunai right in the eye and immediately felt how the chakra of the tailed beast inside him began to slowly collapse, and his body itself, as if pierced by many thousands of swords. It was pain. The pain that he had been waiting for and wanted to feel all his life. And in delight from this new and so familiar feeling for him, he began to wait for a new attack, simultaneously trying to restore the chakra of the tailed beast inside him. But the more he tried, the more pain and suffering he felt. And suddenly he felt as if someone's skeletons began to attack him from under the ground. These were people who died on the field of shinobi wars of different eras, and in fear and horror, Gaara slipped out of his impenetrable defense, and looking at Sasuke with rage he thought, "What? What kind of guy is this? Shikaku, take it." And the sand's rage grew with every second, and suddenly Gaara realized what he had to do. He tried to suppress his chakra, but he didn't know how to do it, because he always relied on his strength and the strength of his beast, and in attempts to suppress his chakra he eventually began to lose consciousness. But right when Sasuke began to win, the place where the Hokage and Kazekage were sitting exploded in the stadium, and all the spectators were immersed in genjutsu. At that moment, the enemy ninjas who were there began their massacre, and Temari and Kankuro, 2 guys from Gaara's team and part-time his older brother and sister, grabbed him under the armpit, disappeared from sight, and Sasuke, realizing that things were bad, went to Naruto, Sakura and Kakashi. Pain. And running quickly to his friend, Sasuke instantly poured his chakra into him to dispel the hypnotic sleep into which he had fallen. "Sasuke!" was all the blonde shouted, hugging him, which caused Sasuke to feel a burning indignation and questions, because even Naruto was behaving like that. "Naruto, Sasuke, Konoha has been attacked." Their Jonin mentor Kakashi quickly began to explain the situation. "Your task is to stop the Sand Ninja. This will be an A-rank mission, since we do not know all the forces of our enemy," he said and bit his finger, calling one of his dogs. "This is Pakun, he will help you track them down." To which the friends only nodded in unison, but as soon as the guys were about to leave, Sakura joined them with the phrase, "Even though you are idiots, I will go with you too," she said, and hit the wall with such force that it began to crack little by little. "That's why I've never gotten married," Wei Ying answered. Shocked by Sakura's hot temper, and Sasuke decided to remain silent. And Team 7, along with Pakun, set out to pursue the fugitives. And on the way, Sasuke asked Naruto, "So Naruto, what do you know about Gaara and his power?" Here Naruto quickly swallowed with anxiety and began his story. "A couple of days ago I ran into him in the hospital. He said that pain and the desire to kill make him alive. It gave me goosebumps." But clearly feeling the trembling in his friend's voice, the young Uchiha realized that there was something else here that Naruto was afraid to say. "Anything else?" he asked his friend with a hint of coldness and detachment, hoping that Sasuke's voice would shake him off. They sealed a beast in him, just like me," Naruto answered, lowering his head. To which Sasuke only boldly continued on his way. After all, he had a good plan that could help their team defeat Gaara, but worried about his adopted child, Wei Ying asked. Are you sure this will work? Gaara already knows your moves and can counter them. To which Sasuke replied with a grin. Even though he knows what I'm capable of, he doesn't know the abilities of our entire team. Especially since the stronger the chi energy, the more vulnerable it is to dark energy. Which is what I noticed during the battle with him. So, if the guys and I work together, we can defeat him in no time. To which Naruto, immediately understanding who his friend was addressing, immediately added, We'll manage, you'll see. However, Sakura was not very confident in their victory. Sasuke, do you have a plan? To which Sasuke only nodded to her, but then he felt surveillance and threw the one remaining kunai charged with dark power. To which Pakun was even surprised. Wow, great reaction. But immediately throwing aside all his doubts, Sasuke said, We need to split up. Sakura, Pakun, you go ahead and try to stall for time. Naruto, and I will catch up with you. Wait, Sasuke, are you sure? The dog asked Sasuke quite sensibly, to which Uchiha, after racking his brains for a second, replied, Of course, besides, we don't have time for arguments. Sakura knows how to put up a chakra barrier. I'm sure she can handle it if anything happens, and besides, with the help of the hermit mode, I'll be able to find you in the shortest time. And then he grabbed Naruto by the scruff of the neck and together they began to wait for their pursuers. And as soon as they were already 100 meters away from them, the friends silently nodded to each other and began to carry out their plan. Naruto used shadow cloning and began to fight the enemy, but it was a distraction so that Sasuke would put these two comrades into genjutsu and the guys would be able to tie them up. Which they did, and within a few minutes, they managed to beat the enemy Chunins together. Well done! Was all Elder Island commented on their victory, to which Sasuke only smiled and said, Without your lessons, my friend and I wouldn't have managed, so thank you, Masama. Sasuke answered and felt his guardian's smile, and even for a second he managed to see it in his imagination. And the warmth that he felt charged him with new strength, and they, together with Naruto, set off in the footsteps of Pakun and Sakura. And literally within an hour, having encountered Shino, who helped Sakura and Pakun continue to spy on Gaara and company, having detained one of the members of the enemy ninja, they managed to catch up with their team, who with a shield against evil spirits were fighting off Gaara, who began to turn into something terrible and frightening. Sasuke and Naruto, upon seeing Gaara transform into a beast, fell into a slight stupor, from which Sasuke was able to be brought out by his guardian, who said, Now is not the time to retreat. Be careful! The elder's voice was full of determination and confidence in Sasuke, and Sasuke himself decided to cheer Naruto up by taking him by the shoulder. Naruto! There is no way back, we must act, he said, and the guys entered the battle. Naruto created 100 shadow clones to distract Gaara from Sakura and Pakun and began to beat the half-tailed one. And when Gaara himself did not expect it, Naruto put a bomb under his tail, and Gaara was about to kill the impudent fellow. When he immediately heard the sounds of a flute, he realized that it was all a distraction, but unable to dodge the attack with his beast body, Gaara began to feel the agony of pain again, from the dark energy that overtook him after Sasuke's attack, and in order to receive this agony further, Gaara or the tailed beast injured Sakura, who was nearby, weakened after the technique, which made Sasuke lose his grip and again allowed the dark energy to reach his chakra, thereby emptying himself and instantly losing consciousness, plunging into a state where even Masama is unable to help. And being unconscious, he came again to the lake where he learned the technique of the Uchiha clan. And he began to cry from his helplessness and weakness, to which the elder came up to him and hugged him with the phrase, It's okay, Sasuke. But Sakura, Sasuke began to say only, and his hatred for himself for not being able to foresee such a turn of events began to grow in him more and more. However, Wei Ying only stroked his head understandingly. Well, I think Naruto and Sakura can handle it. You did everything you could. And so Sasuke roared on the shoulders of his guardian. He felt all the warmth and all the care and anxiety of Wei Ying. He was grateful to the elder of Yiling for always being with him. This warmth calmed Sasuke and his self-hatred soon disappeared without a trace, as at the time when his parents died and Masama became the only relative for him. But as soon as Sasuke woke up, Naruto had already defeated Gaara, and he himself felt some kind of emptiness filling his soul. He initially did not understand what was happening, but this feeling of loss and emptiness grew and grew. And as soon as his friend approached him, he immediately asked, "How is Sakura?" To which he replied with a smile, "It's okay, she's alive." Of course, Sasuke was happy about this. But at the same time he continued to feel emptiness, and in horror he tried to mentally call out to his mentor, but he did not feel even a shadow of his emotions and thoughts. The moment of their last meeting began to flash through Sasuke's mind, and with this warm memory, Sasuke began to feel pain that he had never felt before. This pain burned through his entire heart, and his soul seemed to be torn into pieces. Sasuke's path . A whole week has passed since the events when the guys defeated the Sand Ninja, Gaara, and as Team 7 later found out, the third Hokage died using a sealing technique. Sasuke's pain and devastation did not subside. For the first 3 days he did not even leave the house and missed the funeral of the third master, arguing that he was exhausted from using black energy. He found out, thanks to the ANBU who were present at the death, what technique caused the anomaly of the interweaving of souls this and last time, but this information did not make him feel any better. On the contrary, all 3 days that he did not leave the house he blamed the third master for using this technique again. But after lying with this thought for a night, he realized that in addition to this seal, there must have been something else that would have made his mentor's soul leave his mind. But without finding an answer to this question, he fell into depression, and the memory of their last meeting warmed his soul, but it also made Sasuke's heart break from grief and sadness. He did not know what to do next and could not predict all the events that could happen to him. After a few days, he started to communicate with his friends again, to walk with them, to joke about them, but Naruto couldn't help but notice Sasuke's depressed state, who was hiding something through his smile and laughter, and he stopped talking about his mentor, although Naruto knew how important he was for Sasuke. He knew very well that Wei's mentor was not just a guardian for Sasuke, but even a father, to some extent. And when the guys seemed to start to disperse, Naruto first went home to think over all his thoughts about his friend's condition. But after thinking carefully, he realized that rather than guess, it would be better to ask him himself. The sun was already starting to set when Naruto found Sasuke sitting on a bench, not far from the lake, where Sasuke usually went when he was sad. "Hello, Sasuke." That's all he shouted to his friend, to which he only looked in Naruto's direction with surprise. But immediately seeing him, he lowered his eyes sadly. "What happened?" the blonde asked, walking up to his friend and sitting down next to him. To which Uchiha replied after a minute of silence, "I can't hear him anymore." And when he said this, tears appeared in his eyes, and they themselves took the shape of a flower. "Sasuke, your eyes!" Naruto exclaimed in amazement, looking at him. And Sasuke just looked at Naruto in bewilderment, as if he heard all his thoughts or emotions, as if his friend himself was saying them out loud, and realizing what Naruto meant, he lowered his gaze again, touching his eyes with one of his palms. "My brother told me that to get such eyes, you need to lose someone close to you," and after minutes of tears, he continued, "Unlike Itachi, I didn't have to kill anyone, but this pain." And turning off his new abilities, Sasuke turned to Naruto, looking at him. "What do you think? Did my brother feel the same pain?" Naruto was taken aback by this question. He himself had never had any contact with his older brother Sasuke and could not answer. Well, I guess," was all Naruto said to support his friend in such a difficult moment. "It's hard for me to judge what it's like to lose someone close to you. My parents died when I couldn't think straight yet." So the unpredictable ninja of all of Konoha explained his answer with a sad sigh. To which Sasuke only smiled and said with no less sadness, "Thanks, Naruto." And so they sat until midnight, not speaking to each other, but only sitting next to each other and supporting each other. And having returned home, Sasuke suddenly thought about the fact that he had become stronger, thanks to the techniques and skills of the Elder of Island, who was from other lands and where the techniques and customs were completely different, and therefore other countries would have techniques and skills, thanks to which he would be able to develop his skills and abilities and thereby fulfill the promise that Itachi took from him, and which he could not break in any way. And the next day, after a grueling training session in archery and kunai throwing, Sasuke collected all the necessary things for the first time. He headed towards the gate from which one could leave the village, but right on the way to them he met his friends Naruto and Sakura. He was in confusion, because he wanted to leave silently and quietly, so as not to disturb his friends and not to frighten them, but chance decreed otherwise, and approaching them he said with a smile on his face and a heavy heart, "I'm leaving Konoha." He replied and immediately added, so as not to scare the guys, "I'll study." And these words discouraged the young ninja who had just recently defeated the enemy sand ninja. Besides, they remembered the man who had attacked them in the Forest of Death and were very worried that he would be able to attack Sasuke again, especially Naruto, who knew the situation related to Sasuke and his mentor was worried about this. "Who? Where?" Sakura asked in her shock, unable to understand why Wei Ying did not stop Sasuke from such a stupid and thoughtless act. "Everywhere," Sasuke answered the guys with a smile, completely confident in his actions. "The world is huge, guys." And then a little while later, knowing that Sasuke could no longer be stopped, and remembering Kakashi's words, Naruto asked, "And when will you be back, Date Bayo?" "I think in about 2 years," Sasuke answered and added with a laugh, "After all, I'm not going to leave you here for long. And at the same time, you can go your own way and gain your own experience." And hugging goodbye, like very old friends, Sasuke left Konoha with a smile and set off on his journey. He did not know where his choice would lead him, or whether he would be able to fulfill his promise. But he knew one thing for sure, that despite the fact that he was no longer able to hear his mentor, he would continue to search for his strength and his path. Mysterious events. Almost 2.5 years had passed since Sasuke had said goodbye to his friends and left Konoha. Not much had changed since then, but not a little either. The elders of the village had appointed one of Hiruzen's students, the medic Sanin Lady Tsunade, who was also the granddaughter of the village's founder, as the 5th Hokage. Although she was already over 50, thanks to her strength she looked about 35 to 40 years old, which could not be said about her peer and Hiruzen's second student Jiraiya, whom Naruto Uzumaki had asked to teach new techniques even before the start of the third test of the Chunin exam. The owners of the tailed beasts began to be hunted by the secret organization, Akatsuki, consisting mainly of renegades from hidden villages, among which was the ill-fated elder brother of Sasuke, Itachi Uchiha, who hated himself for the death of his relatives. They dressed in black robes with patterns of red clouds, and each of them had a crossed-out sign of belonging to his village. The news about them, as soon as they began to act, spread to all the districts of the 5 countries, after which everyone, on a tip from Jiraiya, began to hunt them, while the Sanin himself traveled around the countries with his student and wrote his book along the way, not forgetting to teach the young blonde. But the situation that happened in 5 countries made them return half a year earlier, namely the strange murders of Akatsuki members. So far, 3 members of this organization have been killed at the time of their return. The first victim was a renegade ninja from the hidden stone village named Deidara. Thanks to the espionage of Rutambu, it was possible to find out that on his body were found 2 seals written in blood in a language unknown to the 5 countries, but familiar to Root and directly to their leader Danzo. The only thing known about the second renegade was his name Kakuzu, a renegade ninja who was rumored to have killed the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju. The weather was sunny and windless, which is why the whole area was steaming. But for the failed ninja Naruto Uzumaki, dressed in a warm black and orange jacket, nothing mattered. He happily ran along the familiar streets and alleys and, having climbed the highest pole, began to admire the view of the village, when he suddenly heard, "Hey, idiot! Get off before you get hit with a 5th, said the ninja with a funny short ponytail on his head, a former classmate of Naruto and Sasuke's Shikamaru Nara, who, oddly enough, was walking accompanied by the Kunoichi from the Sand Village, already known to Naruto Sabaka no Temari, the older sister of Gaara, whom they managed to defeat together with Sasuke, with a slightly indifferent look. "Hello, Shikamaru," our blonde said happily, coming down, and looking at Temari added, "And I greet you, Temari." "Listen, Shikamaru, are you on a date?" Naruto asked playfully, for which he received a blow to the head from the violent Kunoichi. "Not at all, I'm here on assignment," Temari answered with indignation and embarrassment, which made Naruto think a little. "The task?" To which Shikamaru confusedly expressed his emotions with a face palm and began to answer. My god, what a pain in the ass! In short, the Konoha ninja recently found a missing nin made of sand, belonging to the Akatsuki organization. I thought Jiraiya-san told you about it. To which Naruto only sulked in displeasure, because the perverted hermit, that's what Naruto called his teacher, simply informed him that they would have to return to the village ahead of time, since they had been called by the fifth lady, whom, from Naruto's personal experience, it was better not to anger. And before he had time to come to his senses, his old acquaintances, the captain of Team 7 Kakashi Hotake and the grown-up Sakura, immediately approached him. Naruto, you're back already? She said timidly. Yes. The journey was not easy, he said with fatigue, but at the same time with a smile on his face and remembering what he was thinking about, he decided to ask the guys, do you know where the perverted hermit is? To which Kakashi replied with a smile that couldn't be seen because of his mask. Lady Tsunade called him so that he could explain something about this strange matter. I heard. 3 Akatsuki have already died, Naruto responded dismissively to the answer and drove the 5th into the office, who, noticing the restless number 1 ninja, said with a smile. Oh, hi Naruto, long time no see. And I greet you, you haven't changed a bit, Granny-sama. He said with a smile and respect, which initially even angered Tsunade, but maintaining her composure, she turned to Jiraiya.